Hey, I know I emailed about some of the things in your code I saw earlier, but I wanted to just go ahead and try to record something in real time, actually looking at your actual code. As a word of warning, I have piano lessons going on in the room behind me, drum lessons a little bit down the hall, so we may have a bit of a soundtrack. Hopefully, it's not too distracting. Let's start off by looking at the errors that Dreamweaver is finding. It says on line 6 that you have a special character that must be escaped. So if I come up here to line 6, you've opened a link here, which you've put in the proper place. We'll talk more about the actual file that you are trying to link to in a moment. But what it means by the character isn't escaped, you just didn't put the closing angle bracket there or the greater than symbol. So that's what that's referring to. On line 33, it says tag must be paired, no start tag. So you've got a closing header tag, it thinks, but no starting header tag. So when I scroll down, we see that that is a load of phooey because on line 31 you have an opening header tag, and on line 33 you have a closing header tag. When I look at my example, oh, I scrolled down, I forgot. When I look at my example though, I have it typed the same way. So the best suggestion I would have would be to delete and retype what you have on lines 31 through 33. Because like I said, it's good, but for some reason it doesn't like it. So that might or might not fix the error that it thinks is on line 33. And then on line 83, it says that you are missing a closing div tag. So if I scroll down to line 83, Dreamweaver better get with the game. Okay, here we go. You see the closing body tag. It's not saying that the closing div tag has to go there. It just has to happen sometime before the body is closed out because you opened a div ID, a div with the ID of container up on line 30, I think. I'll scroll up and see if I can find it. That's a little too far. Line 30, yep, is where you opened it. Coincidentally, you forgot the closing angle bracket or the closing greater than symbol there as well. So fix that symbol and then come down and sometime before line 83, insert a closing div tag. When I look back at my example from 502, I see that I closed my div also just before the body tag. So that's probably what I would do if I were you. Okay, so coming back to your code, we've looked at those errors. I'm going to hit pause on the recording just long enough to flip back to the email I sent and see some of the other things I wanted to point out. Okay. In the second point of the first email I sent, it looks like you have all of your CSS in the head of your page. So let's come back over here to Dreamweaver. And going back up to where the head is, trying to go back up to where the head is. Okay, you've opened the head, have your other stuff you have to have, blah, blah, blah. But then here in green, starting on line 8, you have CSS. You've typed it properly. It actually can work here, but technically this is supposed to go on a separate sheet. So where you have netiquette.html, you would also need a netiquette.css. Netiquette.html should be saved in your 502 folder, and netiquette.css should be saved in your styles folder. So really what you're trying to make your HTML, your netiquette.html connect to or link to here would not be netiquette.html. That's itself. It can't link back to itself. Or I mean, I guess it might try to, but that's nonsensical in the HTML world. So you would want to change this to netiquette.css if that's what you name the file of external style. But I do want to show you where I embedded and linked to my sheet for the assignment. Let's see, I'm going to scroll back to the top of my code. I'm on Dreamweaver. And you can see here that in my link, I have ... and then /styles. That's because in /netiquette.css. That's because that tells it, hey, go look in the styles folder a couple levels back and look for netiquette.css. And then the rest of the link is fine. So that's how you would go about fixing the link as you have it with the CSS starting on line 8. You don't even have a need to link to an external sheet, but knowing that Dr. Andy prefers to have .css files linked in to your HTML, I would recommend taking from line 8 to line, lordy, 25. So from line 8 to line 25, and putting them in an entirely new file saved in your styles folder called netiquette.css. The next thing that you had concerns about was you refer to it as a pop-up, or like the pop-out, the inset not working. That's known as an aside in HTML world, and I believe you had it coded mostly properly. I'm looking for it in your code right now. Let's see. Let me hit pause until I find that. You do have the aside coded properly. I see it closed here on line 74, and you started it on line 60. So looks like the aside is fine. You have to define it as an aside in order to make it go kind of off to the side. But let's take a look now at how you would make that go off to the side. I mentioned in the email talking about it floating. So I'm going to go back up here to your CSS at the top of the page, just so we can talk a little bit about what it should look like once you do paste it into your new sheet. So you have here what's called selectors. That's the first part of any CSS rule set that you write. Fun fact, that's the unit I'm teaching right now to my web design students. So body is a selector, H1 is a selector, H2. You actually need a selector called aside. Oh, I just noticed you have two body selectors. That might be confusing it also. Body on line 23 lumped in with table, and then body on line 8. So take out that redundancy. But you also need to, it can go anywhere in this, but you just would come down here and you would go to a new opening brace, but before the brace you would type aside. I'm not going to actually do it here because I don't want to mess up your code, but inside of it you would give it the descriptor or the property and value. Property would be float with a colon, and then your value would be right, and that's going to make it float off to the right, like in Patrick's demonstration. Looking a little more closely, I don't even see a table in your HTML code, so I would just delete lines 23 through 25 from your code altogether. So body was redundant, so I had told you, or I had recommended to delete that, but then you don't need any table data or table header, excuse me, formatting because you don't have a table. So I would just delete those altogether. Now, something else I mean about the competing code is you have, let's see, here in the body, you want the font to be white, and you want the background, excuse me, you want the font to be black and the background color to be white. All F's is white in hexadecimal world. Oh, look, you have a float right tag. You don't want that there. You want that to go up in a rule set of CSS with the selector of aside. Okay, so text color, all zeros would be black. Background color, all F's would be white. And you've declared for it here to have a font size of 25. That's a little bit large, and I'm going to speak to that here in just a moment. But I don't want to deviate too much from the color here. So looking at the colors, black text, white background. When I look up here in your CSS, you have for the background to be black, and it even pops up and it's trying to be helpful and show you that it's black. But then background is white. So it's like, is background black or is background white? Inline CSS, which is what you've done here, actually trumps any other CSS, even with braces, even with external sheets. So what you have typed here in line 29 is actually what it's showing you. So I would recommend taking all of this out of the body tag on line 29 and only using CSS formatting, so it's not competing in that sense. Now, you do have some other conflicting messages going on with your code. Looking at the headers, so your H1, you've programmed for it to be a font size of 25, H2, a font size of 20, H3, back up to 25, which would make it the same size as an H1. The whole purpose of using H1s, or headers, heading tags, heading 1, heading level 2, heading level 3, so on and so forth, is because it automatically bolds them and helps to organize the code of your page in a way that would work for screen readers and just to improve accessibility features, which I think is the next unit. But anywho, so the font sizes here, this is really unnecessary because I actually looked up what are the actual font sizes for headings, and I have that over here. So an H1 would by default in HTML world be 32 pixels tall, H2s would be 24 pixels tall, H3s 18.72 pixels. That's kind of exact, but thank goodness we don't have to give a specific size and it can just be what it is. H4s are 16 pixels, and beyond that, you really don't need them because H4s are similar size to regular paragraph text. So going back to font sizes, you don't need to declare a font size for your headers, but then going up to, Lordy, I've lost it. Okay. I have way too many tabs open. Okay. So going back here to your code, let's see, you could delete those. Oh, and in the body, where you have just the background color here, you need to add all of those other style elements that are on line 29 currently that I recommended you deleting. Move them up here. So, of course, at that point, you would have to simplify the color codes so that they didn't conflict against each other. But then also, if you want the body text to be a little bit larger than the regular tiny paragraph text, if you make, let's see, I think you had it at 25 points is what you wanted. 25 pixels, excuse me. Yeah, font size 25 pixels. You can make it that, but just keep in mind that if your regular text is going to be 25 pixels tall, it's going to be slightly larger than your second level of heading. So that might aesthetically get confusing to the eye. It's not technically bad, but I really think if you just want larger text in the body, you could go with 16 point font or 16 pixel font. At least that's what I have my students do in web design. So I think that was everything. I'm going to hit pause while I go back and look at my email. I'm running out of time on the free recording thing. I think that was actually it. I know it feels like I kind of picked apart your page, but it does look good and you have excellent content. Border color is great. And I think once you get the competing color codes figured out, that it's going to just only add to it. If you have any more questions, trying to get all of this set in place or corrected, please just let me know. Oh, one more thing. I see down here on line 34, you have opened an H2, then you closed the H2 before you actually did anything to it. So you need to delete the P tags and the strong tags because you just made it big and bold, which, okay, looks good, but once again, for screen readers and those with accessibility issues, it's going to be confusing. So remove that P tag, remove that strong and close strong. And your P tag just needs to go over in front of is. And you need to close the H2 after internet etiquette. So it would be opening H2, netiquette, internet etiquette, closing H2, open P is crucial, blah, blah, blah. Because you've closed it down here in the perfect place. But yeah, so there you go. Hope this helps. Look forward to seeing your finished product.